Hello, everyone. Welcome to Abnormal Investigations. Today we've got John back with us, and we're going to be taking off pretty much where we left off from the last show. Tonight we have Kristen joining us. She's going to be co-hosting with me tonight, and Amanda will be taking the night off. She had some personal issues come up. So let's go ahead and bring Sky on real quick before we bring on our main guest.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Sky. Welcome
Hello,
to the
Mike.
show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you ready for this one?
I'm so excited for this topic. Ever
I have
since I
no.
found out I was Blackfoot Indian, I'm like, oh, these are my people. I need to listen to everything they say.
I think it's going to be a very interesting show. It's definitely a mix of the tribes.
Yeah,
So it's always interesting to compare, what our history was with other histories of other tribes, and it's
absolutely.
fascinating how they compare. All right, so
For
John
sure.
left off with he was coming up to a door, and we left off at the door. So let me go ahead and welcome John back to the show. John, thank you for coming back for part two. I was just telling everybody we're going to pick up where we left off at the doorway you were fixing to take us through, and the floor is yours, sir.
Hello there. Well, thanks for having me back, and yeah, I'm glad you're interested in the first segment there, and yeah, let's jump right into it. Is there any questions you wanted to start with, or do you want me to just go right into the encounter, and then if you got any
So,
questions, we can
I
backtrack.
maybe to bring the audience up a little bit up, kind of a recap. What brought you to this door? What was the process that led you to this door? And then we will go, I guess, beyond the door.
Okay, that's a good question because this really matters, and this is confusing because if you remember, I was telling you how you could end up in what is essentially NDE without knowing. And I believe that's what happened. And it took me a long time to figure out, but what it started with is dreams of suffocating. And what's weird is it took me, I don't know if it took me a year, maybe two, to realize how bad it was. But basically, in my sleep, I'm wheezing and sneezing and barely getting any air. And in the summertime, it would get far worse because I do landscaping, so dirt, grass, and slivers would go up there and basically close my nose. And what's weird is when you're sleeping, you won't just open your mouth and breathe. Instead, you just keep on sneezing. Um, so it didn't really seem serious at the time, but I actually had almost died in my dreams many times, like to the point where I'm at the sink trying to cough. I can't cough. I can't drink water. And this is in a dream, remember? But I could tell that I'm not breathing and I can't breathe. Sometimes I was caught in underwater. One time I remember being in an elevator and the air was getting thinner and time slows down and I would be trapped in there for what felt like hours, um, trying to breathe and not being able to get a single breath. The most common one though was the going to the kitchen sink. I'd be in my kitchen, coughing, but because I'm trying to clear my lungs, right? So I'm trying to figure out like why can't I get a single breath here? Um, at the time, I didn't know that's what was going on. It sort of one day it clicked in when I went to lay down, and in about 7 seconds, I was like just about to fall asleep, and that feeling came back, and I jumped out of bed, and I was like thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute. It's like I can't even. It got to the point where I was afraid to go to sleep. But these like little nose strips eventually started keeping me alive. And like I need a surgery on my nose, and there's a whole reason for it. It's all mangled in there. Actually, I forgot to put on my nose strip today because it's hard to talk because like it's closed all the time, so I turn into like a mouth breather.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. So do you feel like that's your nose, or I mean your breathing has something to do with your dreams?
Yeah, it did. It definitely did at the time. And so now I don't get them now that I got the breathing under control. Um,
Oh, interesting.
so for people who are having, like I've heard of other people who are having unusual dreams where it even got paranormal. And I tried to tell him, I think he thought I was messing with him because uh, he was basically saying like, no, what I saw was real. And I was like, oh, I know it's real. But like when you get into trying to tell people who aren't spiritual, they think you're pulling their leg,
Right.
right?
For
So
sure.
I have a quick question. Uh, During these dreams that you would have where you couldn't breathe or having difficulty breathing, did you ever experience the Hat Man phenomenon or sleep paralysis?
That is a great question. And what's weird about that is I saw him in town here in the daylight. Or no, not in the daylight. It was at nighttime, but in town under the lights, just strolling through town. But during the sleep paralysis or whatever it was, I had two other encounters. One was in a completely other realm, and the other one, something came into my room.
Whenever you saw it in town, did it appear to be supernatural to you? And then the same question for in your room, or or did they seem to have substance to them?
Like
So
did they
the
look real?
the one downtown, nobody else noticed him. And you know what? Actually, I told my girlfriend, I was like, look at this guy, because there's something really weird about the timing about that. And of course, she was like, what are you talking about? And this never really clued in, right? But I looked at this guy. He was there. He had a briefcase. He was scrolling. He was just strolling down like there was basically this almost like a balcony at this strip mall, and he was on the top floor. But that's actually quite a bit later. And what's important, there's more to that story.
Uh,
But I should go back because I believe the Hat Man was actually related to one of the things I seen. That was a theory I had anyway, so that's why I was like,
yeah,
that's a
because
great question because I can't
when
believe you
you,
went there.
yeah, I'm a little bit different than most, I think. Um,
Because you know what? When I've told people that before, I
uh
think they really thought I was pulling their leg.
I go off of patterns, and I know that by the description you was given of what you was going through, that it matched, the patterns that a lot of people talk about as the Hat Man. I have experienced sleep paralysis. I have not experienced the Hat Man, but that was one of the most terrifying things that had ever happened to me in my life. I experienced it 3 times in two different places, and it was terrifying, man. I'm sorry that you went through that for sure. It's one of the worst memories that I have, dude. If you want to, let's go ahead and then we'll pick up where we was at so we don't jump ahead so far. So you think during your sleep, you probably had what, a near death experience? Is that what brought you to this door that we were talking about?
That's what I believe, yeah. And I don't actually remember a door. Instead, it's just like, it's more like just appearing there, almost like
So you
the
crossed
movie
the.
Inception or The Matrix. Like you're just all of a sudden you're at a place and you're not exactly sure how you got there.
So do you believe that you were possibly on the other side of the veil?
I know I was. I know I
Okay.
was. Um, but for the story's sake, like in my worldview, that's where I was at. But could have just been even if it was just some sort of dream, it's actually going to be quite related to the investigation. And like you said with the Hat Man, that's where it led me to as well. And like, so even if these two visions I had were just some sort of dream, there was a message in not only the order but who those beings were. And then it basically unraveled this whole mystery that I'm going to try to get into. And the Hat Man ends up being like one of the key players.
But you don't believe it was a dream, right? It was real to you,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
yeah, that's what I think. But just for people who may have a different worldview,
right.
you know, you can
So,
basically imagine it any way you want. But the weird thing is there's a lot of reality and history within those visions.
so I'm going to ask the $1 million question. And what was on the other side, dude? What did you see?
Okay, do you want to let's let's go through the encounter because just saying the name,
Uh-huh.
I I don't know its name. I think I know what it is because of my investigation after. But
Right.
let me tell the story from the point of view that I had at the time, because then I could take you down the journey that I had to go down.
Oh,
Otherwise,
yeah,
it when I jump too far ahead or without like explaining, it can be hard to follow.
absolutely. I'm ready to hear this journey. I've been ready for a while. I'm sure Kristen's ready.
You
Oh,
know,
for sure. This is so fascinating to me.
the lead up is even crazier. I kind of told you about like the fasting, and there was this event I was preparing for.
Uh-huh.
All this stuff kind of I think led up to this doorway getting opened, and there was actually one final moment that maybe we'll talk about, but it came from this cell phone app, and that's another story. It's a really weird one. I should share that as well. But this encounter happened just out of nowhere. Just basically, I just appeared in the underworld. That's the only way I can describe it.
So where you was at wasn't a happy place.
Oh no, it was the underworld. Now I'll describe it for you because what I did was I looked all over the place. It was like it was like I spawned in a video game. And so I looked left, I looked right, I looked up, I looked all around, and there was like a landscape. But what caught my eye is there was actually a dome around me, and this is something that uh, at the time I was just like, "What in the?" The funny word that's what I want to say is what in the he double hockey sticks, because
Right.
there's this what is a rose dome around me. And at the time I never heard the phrase looking through the rose glass.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of funny when I heard that phrase, it stuck out to me, but something I never heard about before. There's literally a rose dome just big enough for me. And that's what I see as I look around. But beyond that is a sort of like a desert landscape, but it's orangey, very orange, like what's that? You ever seen an orange horizon?
Right.
It's very much like that, but there's no sun. It's just like that everywhere. And when I look down, there's actually when I like kind of focus in like on the what's in front of me, I look and the ground's very flat and it's got heat waves coming off it, kind of like a hot pavement. But these heat waves are moving. They're so what's the word here?
Kind of like a mirage, like off
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
pavement. Okay.
Yep, exactly. The heat waves rising. You could see you could actually see the distortion and all that. But it's rising so fast that there's hurricanes. Like I don't know if you can imagine how hot this is. Like boiling hot. This
Yeah.
is this is so hot that the rising heat waves are creating storms of tornadoes.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And that's like the only thing that really stuck out to me. It was just endless. But I remember looking down and there was something, there's a little being standing way off in the distance of this hellscape, which actually kind of looks like, you ever seen the movie Constantine?
I have not seen that one.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Some of the people in the chat might have, but just for visualization. So that was a kind of like this biblical movie with Keanu Reeves. A fantasy biblical movie. It wasn't like
Right.
scriptural. But they had a moment where he goes into the underworld. The color looked like that, but there was no buildings or cars. When he went into the underworld, it was almost like he was on Earth, but for some reason the hellscape took over. So it wasn't like underground. Basically, in his in the movie, it was basically parallel. But do you have any questions before I go into the being about like the landscape or any the what I've set up so far?
So it was pretty barren. There was nothing really there except for just a hot, almost like a out of control world, huh? A lot of
Just like
like a stormy, dark, hot world.
it was just a desert, yeah. And I can't remember if there was cliffs, mountains. I don't remember any of that. All I remember was kind of like a flat plain, piping hot, and this sort of like storm happening.
Did the being seem affected by the storm?
Oh no, no, it was just standing there. So for this one didn't seem to last very long. Like it was only could have been a minute. But as I popped in there and I'm thinking to myself, where am I? So I look left, I look right, I look up and all around, kind of noticed that I'm looking through this dome glass. So I was never like, I never was burnt or anything. I never noticed any sensation. And what's weird is I wasn't even scared. I was like just observing. And by the time I was out of there, I was just trying to figure out like what in the heck that meant. But as I'm kind of like looking around in the distance and I am when I focused in on the heat waves, right? There's a little, like I mentioned, there's a little guy standing out there and he's like way out there, okay? And the pose was intimidating because the way it was basically like the way you would imagine a dog man standing on the edge of the woods. You know how unsettling you'd feel if you looked up and seen it standing there and it's not moving?
Right.
It
So it
was
had
just
a
it
like
was
a
just
sense of like a sense of dread.
hmm yeah, it was just standing there staring at me. I know this thing's looking at me too. And so this is where things are kind of weird because the more I look at it, the closer I'm getting to it and I can't take my eyes off it. It's almost as if I'm zooming in. It's not that I'm just able to focus. Um, and I don't remember even having a body. But what it's like is in video games, there's something called a free cam where you just turn into a ball and you could fly all over the map. It was sort of like that, but I'm moving slowly towards this thing. You know what I mean? Something's pulling me in or whatever. For some reason, just me focusing on it is like a telescope zooming in. And it's like, okay, it's getting closer, closer, closer. and the details start coming in. It goes from just a silhouette into, now I see its whole body. I see its every detail that this thing has. I see ribs, I see sinew, I see individual teeth. From far away, uh, I'm looking at the whole body, but as I zoom in, I keep getting closer and closer to the face up until I was basically nose to nose with it.
What it look like?
So what's funny is, or not funny, what's creepy is there's a lot of things in media that look exactly like this thing, or close, I should say. But one of the closest is something from Mortal Kombat. Did you ever play that game?
I played it when it. Yeah, I did play that when it first came out.
Back on like Super Nintendo?
Oh yeah.
Well, there's one character named Baraka. Do you remember that guy?
Does he have like the 6 arms? Is that him?
The sword arms, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That is probably the closest thing to the appearance. You can compare Freddy Krueger, maybe. It's more vicious looking than Freddy Krueger, though.
Was it wearing a hat?
No, no. From what I remember, no clothes at all. Maybe it. Oh, actually, wait a minute. It might have had like some tattered rags or something like that. But the thing about it is, when I was zooming in on it, I could see that it's all melted, bones exposed, sinew, ribbons. It's basically like a Draugr, sort of like this undead thing. Now, for the sake of the, I can't remember if it was wearing clothes because of how like melted it was, but I think there was actually a second encounter where it was actually wearing this kind of, it was wearing a specific like modern gangster outfit, which I found that really weird until something happened, but I'll have to tell you that one offline
Okay.
because it involves somebody else. But it might be interesting to the story for yourself, for your investigation. But for just my encounter, um, I think this one had nothing on. But as I'm zooming up to its face, all its teeth are showing, and it looks like a smile. It looks like it's got. You ever heard of the Grinning Man?
Yes.
Yes, I have. Yep.
He's kind of looks like he's got this Joker smile with wide eyes. Like I can see all the whites of the eyes. If it had whites, because I mean, like that's how wide open the eyeballs are. From what I remember, the eyeballs were all black, like a shark, kind of. But there was no eyelids. That's why it kind of had this wide eye look. And I think it's smiling at me now. I'm thinking like, holy shit, like now I'm in some trouble because not only is this thing here apparently waiting for me and I'm kind of getting pulled into it, but it's smiling at me.
So it definitely, you believe it was acknowledging that you were there.
Oh, it was just me and it. And you know what? You ever hear a mind speak? It
I've never
said
had that. I've never had that happen.
its mouth never moved, but it said something like, I'm trying to think of the words. He says, F up and your ass is mine. And that is what it's saying to me as it's staring at me. Word for word too. Like it was kind of speaking like in the terms of almost like speaking, it was lining me up for a match for some reason. Like a boxing match, lining me up nose to nose, and he says, You F up and your ass is mine. So that was pretty chilling. I
Do
thought
you
to myself, what in the world was that about?
do you feel like he was the boss there, or do you believe he was sent there also because of maybe something he had done wrong? Or
At the time, I had no idea. I
And
even,
also, at the time, did you feel like it was demonic at all? Or you
well,
were
I
in
couldn't,
hell even?
I couldn't help but notice that.
Right.
Even so, actually, at the time, I should say that at the time, I'm not a disbeliever and never was,
Mm-hmm.
but I never imagined myself visiting something biblical, quite like the underworld.
Right.
But yeah, of course, I couldn't help but that was my afterthought, like after the vision was done. Because what's crazy is I remember it just like it happened. It wasn't like a dream that was fleeting that disappeared as I woke up or as time went by. This lesson and what it said never went away.
so, I have a question now. Kristen, you got a couple of questions for me. I'm going to play off of you for a second, Kristen. So, Kristen said, did you feel like you was in hell? And you said that you were not a non-believer. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. If you don't want to answer them, don't worry about it. We'll move on if they're too personal. Uh, but just as far as my investigation and what I'm looking at, is I do a lot of my stuff biblically. Is at the time this happened, was you saved? And also, was you dabbling in things that you shouldn't have been doing at the time that this happened?
Looking back, I was, but I was not saved. Prior to that, I was actually doing a lot of research into, Jesus and sort of biblically what happened with him and just specifically his story. And I never denied him, never disliked anything. In fact, I was always trying to figure it out. Um,
Was you
what exact?
studying demonology or anything like that at that time also when you was trying to figure out your path, your journey?
No, but so going into this stuff, I was actually heavy into conspiracy theories and also Sasquatch. And believe it or not, the overlap eventually hit my mind once these encounters happened. Because at that time, I was actually doing ghost studies, ghosts and UFOs, because I'd kind of moved on from. I got some interesting things to share about Bigfoot because I had made like not a documentary. I don't know what it is. I made a video that kind of presents a case for what Bigfoot might be. And I eventually just moved on from the Bigfoot world, but it kind of always stuck with me because the whole native heritage and Bigfoot overlap. Like, because learning about Bigfoot and the traditions is what got me into learning about Thunderbird and this other being. And I sent you in the email a list of things about Thunderbird, skinwalkers, and this third character that I called Lord of the Underworld. Now he comes from this culture as well. He's kind of like he's second place to Thunderbird in the hierarchy as far as native spirituality goes. So at the time, actually, I thought this thing was a Bigfoot because there is some confusion between wild people and Bigfoot. And I believe this was the doorway. So my intentions weren't necessarily that I was playing with demonic beings or owning items like masks or whatever. In my opinion, it was a Bigfoot mask. But not all these things that go bump in the night are Bigfoot.
Oh
And
yeah, I agree with that for sure.
I mentioned that video I made. So at the time, I was pretty certain that Bigfoot's a hominid species, or primate, whatever you want to call it. And I still believe that, but there's just more confusion when skinwalkers get into the mix, and the fact that they can use prehistoric animals kind of makes things very confusing, because the footprints they're leaving behind are real footprints. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. I could actually probably share for an hour just on Bigfoot footprints.
Right. You got me thinking too, as you said, you wasn't really dabbling anything, but what if, like what I believe, these are all connected to the fallen angels, to Satan. So even studying a Bigfoot, that could maybe open a door, you think, possibly to the supernatural, to the dark side, you think? Is that possible?
I don't know about Bigfoot itself, but if you're interacting with something and you think it's a Bigfoot and you trade food with it, or whatever, that's usually the main one. That's when it gets into the lore too. That's what they're saying, is once you start trading, is what you don't know is you've made some deal that you're not aware of fully, but something on the other end is playing by this spiritual warfare. And what they've done is they got you to sign a clause in the contract, and you never knew it. You thought it was just Bigfoot trading apples or something along those lines. Uh, but
Absolutely. I
but that
believe that.
but that doesn't mean, like, if you're actually trading, like if you gift a Bigfoot something, that I don't think that's the same thing. But what I'm saying is, if you're not 100% sure and there's no confirmation that that's Bigfoot, then you might not know what you're interacting with.
So maybe kind of what you're saying is you might think that you're interacting with a Bigfoot, but on the other hand, you may be making an agreement with something you're not meaning to make an agreement with.
Exactly. That's what I think kind of happened on my side of the story. Now, this is why also, because I sent you those things, this Lord of the Underworld, obviously you can't help but connect that dot to the dot of this underworld. And I thought about it, and it didn't quite hit me until later on, when I was watching a movie and I had seen these same beings. But to set the table, I gotta backtrack a little bit again and tell you about my involvement with this Lord of the Underworld. Because when they call him that, I thought it was because he was a cave dweller. You know what I mean? There's this sort of, like, there was this deception that I was doing to myself, where I was coming in, like I mentioned, I came in late to the game and started looking at all these characters on the board and saying, you know what, this one here is a Bigfoot, and Thunderbird over there is also a cryptid, and they made up all that stuff about the king of the gods because that's what they do, right? But the thing about the native people is they're not they understand the animals in the area. They're fishermen. They know every plant, they know every poison, they know every animal. They're not just gonna invent some backstory to a random bird, let's say, and say, "Oh, see that eagle? That's king of the gods over there," as he flies by.
That makes perfect sense because when I was doing the Girl Scout murders, I was blessed enough that I was able to speak to the shaman. And whenever we discussed Dogman, uh, Bigfoot, um, they shared something with me. They said Dogman is a white man's terminology for this creature, they pretty much said that they were all the same. And when I asked, I was like, "What do you mean they're all the same?" And they're like, "Picture a dog, right? You have a dog that is a canine, but you have Chihuahuas, you have Great Danes, you have Rottweilers. Some of them have pointed ears, some have floppy ears, some have no tails, some have tails. They're the same thing, but they're different." And I told them, I said, "So you believe this?" And they're like, "No, we know this because we lived with them. We're the ones that traded with them, and they even spoke our language." And I thought, wow, that was really interesting. And Amanda's with us now, so welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, John.
Hello there.
Sorry I'm late.
Well, that's okay.
You're good.
Okay.
So John, I would probably take you off your story if I ask you this question. If I do, don't go down this rabbit hole because I want to stay where you're at. What is your thoughts on what is Bigfoot? Does that take us way the other way?
It might, but actually, to put things simple, Bigfoot, in my opinion, is actually a giant Neanderthal. And there's a little more nuance to it, but that was like to make it simple. That's the conclusion that I came to. And to give you a reason why, is that Neanderthals, we don't actually know what they look like, and archaeology is approximation. And I believe that when you look at their skulls, you compare it to a human and to a chimp, it actually is a little closer to chimp. Very dense, very blocky, heavy brow ridge, football-shaped head instead of a human-shaped skull. They're estimated 5 to 10 times stronger than a human when they're only 5 feet tall. So that's actually chimp to ape range for strength. Not only that, Neanderthals were a human hybrid. In the current scientific consensus, the newest analysis says that Neanderthals were hybrids. And actually, so when it gets into that, in that area where the Neanderthals are found, they have almas, which are about a man-sized Bigfoot, still living to this day, just like Bigfoot. Like, in my opinion, they're basically the hominids and humans have coexisted for a long, long, long time, and we're still doing it just like we used to, except the Neanderthals, who are now the Bigfoot, they got chased deep into the woods because they couldn't compete with spears and bows for the plains. They used to live in the plains where fossils could be made, but the mountains don't produce fossils. Like, the bones will disappear. If they bury them, they're not going to create that stone fossil. They'll eventually dissolve away. It takes like a big flood or some sort of environmental procedure. Like, it's a very random thing. Like, not every bone turns into a fossil. And the reason we kind of got those giant spikes in fossils is because of some major floods, which kind of ties into, believe it or not, that ties into Thunderbird and worldwide floods. We get into scripture.
I believe they're Neanderthals too.
Well, the feet are the one, like, remember I told you just I could do an hour on the feet. So Neanderthals have a mid-tarsal break, would you believe that?
Yep.
And their feet are square. They don't have human feet. They're Bigfoot. They're big feet.
Yep.
So I took a picture of a Neanderthal foot. All you got to do is blow up the size a little bit, and it'll fit right into a legit Bigfoot cast, toe for toe, mid-tarsal break and everything. Now this is getting into like a little bit of a sidetrack, but like, I believe the Neanderthal cave sites were found with so many human items is because just like Bigfoot, they would hoard human items. Like, I don't know if you heard stories about people who go into Bigfoot caves, but they said they see backpacks, rifles, like almost like as if,
They take trophies.
yeah, they steal camping supplies and things like that, and they bring
Yes.
it back to their cave. I almost think that they were stealing items from the Cro-Magnons, who were kind of at war with them.
Yep.
And this kind of segues into the native lore. When you hear about wars between natives and giants, there's actually a little bit of a similarity between Cro-Magnon and Native Americans when it comes to strength, bone structure, height. You get these tribes of 6.5 foot tall natives who the hunting parties can chase down deer on foot and kill them with spears. It's not normal stuff when you get into some of the archaeology in the 1800s when they were studying native people. You get some tribes that are pretty unique, and so if they were Neanderthals, that would mean we would have to have some sort of stories where hybrids are happening. And in my grandpa's area, we actually have those stories, and that's why I believe that. It's because like we had the local tale. Now, there's this one story of a lady. It's actually a famous story where she was kidnapped and she came back pregnant, but it didn't survive the birth. Like,
Yeah, I heard
and
that story.
that's in BC, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's usually what happens is the hybrids are they're not able to survive birth.
Yeah.
But once in a while, there's a case where it does happen. Like,
Yep.
if you guys want to research, maybe you've heard of this one already. There's a guy named Patrick, the Bigfoot human hybrid from Washington Wenatchee Lake. Now, that's just an alleged case where it actually lived, and he ended up living to 30 years old.
Wow.
On its own, not too impressive. But when you compare it to the Yeren hybrid and the Almaz hybrid in Russia and China, you're starting to get something fantastic here, because the Yeren hybrid, you could actually look him up on YouTube. Yeren human hybrid. He's a 7 foot tall, has Cro-Magnon features. Actually looks Native American to me a little bit, because he's 7 foot tall. He's got the same shoulders that I got, like really wide. Looks like he could play basketball or football. But this particular guy couldn't speak. He was a little bit, what would you say? He was just kind of, I don't know the proper way to say it. He wasn't fully there like some of the other hybrids who could speak and were pretty clever.
He wasn't
Yeah,
fully developed.
This one
mentally.
was more, he was more wild. Like he would sit on his haunches, kind of like how people say they see Sasquatch, and he would kind of like, he would climb trees, and
So like a Tarzan, the ape man.
he looked like Tarzan. Yeah. Yeah, he was definitely that style. Like he's always hanging out in the wilderness. But
Yeah.
that story's still out there, and that's where when I left the Bigfoot world, because when I had tried reaching out to people, nobody was on that same page, and I just felt like a crazy person because it's too bonkers. However, it's like you were talking about patterns, and for
Right.
me, like I don't come up with theories, because every time I attempted a theory, I was wrong, and it set me back pretty far. What I learned is, like, to be a detective, you may have a theory, but it must propel the investigation.
Yeah, it has to be tangible and provable beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly.
It can't be the end of the goal there. But I'm sorry, yeah, to go off a little far. I could actually go pretty
No,
far
that's
with the
No,
Bigfoot.
That's
that was
fine.
good, John.
That's why I was like, at the time, I was all flesh and bone. And
You know, a lot of the flesh and bone people run into pretty heated discussions because you're probably familiar with Scott Carpenter, Melba Ketchum. they done the
Oh yeah.
the
Yep.
DNA analysis and everything, and they found out that
I
there
am.
was a unknown father, and the mother was human, which
Yep.
made them believe that the Sasquatch and the cryptids are supernaturally
Some sort of
tainted. Their bloodline is tainted,
Yeah.
a hybrid, if you will, between animals and human. Uh,
some sort of
the
genetic manipulation,
Yes.
Yeah, and
a
I'm not,
an
and whenever
abomination.
exactly, and that's what Jesus called them, because
But
Jesus said that they would not be forgiven or any of their generations. So
you know what though? Is that why we're born in sin? Are we also abominations? Because the thing is, we're carrying that Neanderthal gene to this day through that hybridization.
you
And
know,
actually, I could actually I've during my investigation, I found some things that might suggest that I got a little bit of I certainly have Neanderthal lineage. I did a test that showed that I had extremely high. I was in like the top 80% of the world for how much Neanderthal genes I had.
right?
But
Wow.
if it's true that that was happening, the hybrids, then I believe that I actually have an ancestor who was a hybrid.
Right. As far as us being an abomination, I don't think so, because Jesus also, he said that he covered us, and on the cross at Calvary, his blood covered us, but his blood did not expand to the Nephilim. They were not forgiven for, they were an abomination. So it gets really deep down that rabbit hole. You know, the if we only knew who the father was, we would have our answer, right?
Right.
Well, that whole there's some sort of weird entanglement with wild people and not just the fallen angels, but what we'd call mythological gods. But that's kind of where I was going to segue into next is so I was specifically involved with um, this mask, as well as Thunderbird was my tribal crest. And I almost don't want to go into my personal story, but I feel like I should because it ties things together. So I was doing this vision quest, which I was following this specific prophecy, um, but I followed the prophecy the best of my abilities, except I intertwined my own culture into it. And this is where I believe I call it my mistake, but there's a lesson in it. Maybe there's a reason, but bringing in those two elements to mix with this other part. Um, okay, we got these three parts, and to keep it short, like we're gonna have it. We'll just call it the prophecy of a war chief, and we can maybe dig into it a little more. But just to speed things up, we'll just keep it at that. And then I brought in this mask because I was doing something. I was kind of I had a career that I was following, and it's hard to explain, but I was using the prophecy to my advantage. So the thing is you could use the armor of God, and this is jumping forward a little bit, but you could use the armor of God to accomplish anything. It doesn't have to be a war. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Like so there was a separate goal, so I wasn't following the war chief's goal to achieve some sort of war craft or anything like that. It was for a personal journey. Um, but bringing in these two ended up derailing it, in my opinion. And having that pattern there eventually revealed something later on because you remember we had the Thunderbird encounter early on from last episode, and then I ended up in the Underworld briefly. And so, in my opinion, this was the Thunderbird And that mask that I brought into this vision quest, it was almost like
That makes sense.
fate, like these guys. Okay, this is what's funny, guys. Okay, these two crash every vision quest that there's ever been, in my opinion, and I could tell you how and why. But first, I need to kind of set the table with this, what these things are. Now, I was kind of telling you about skinwalkers and specifically the Navajo version that this the elder was talking about on. There's a channel called Navajo Traditional Teachings, and he talks about the evil one and skinwalkers. If you want to take a peek for yourself, he's not a paranormal channel either. He's just a Navajo teachings. But if you want to check that out, it's worth a listen. But that with that version of the skinwalker, that's what I'm talking about. The shapeshifter from beyond, which interacts with humans through rituals and NDEs. Thunderbird is very different. So even though he's also a shapeshifter, there isn't many. Think about like in this, and just so I don't have to hesitate and try to explain everything, just let me fly for a little bit with, and just for everyone listening, it's just for entertainment, but this is my worldview. Like I believe all this stuff 100%. But just so I don't have to like tiptoe, I'm just gonna pretend like,
Fly, John.
yeah, thank
You're
you.
good. You're fine.
Because I don't like to impose and pretend like my worldview is the one, and that you all should uh, follow it. But just so I can get the story out, just let me pretend that it's for entertainment. But this is very real. Okay, Thunderbird, his shape-shifting abilities are very different, and according to the lore, there's only one. So whatever people are seeing when it comes to Thunderbirds, like there's other cryptids out there, but I think people are mistaken when they call it Thunderbird because there's only one Thunderbird. Um, and I'm saying that from our culture, but when I go to other cultures, I've seen the same Thunderbird. And I'm going to tell you how and why here if I can find the right words for it. The Thunderbird exists both in the spiritual and the physical realm, or I should say he can. And generally he's existing within the spirit realm through these NDEs. So anybody who dies, or like an evil shaman, let's say, whips up one of these potions and he drinks it and he has an NDE or a vision. When he's in that vision, there's a very high percentage chance that he's going to run into Thunderbird or one of Thunderbird's messengers.
Or does DMT?
Yep, it'd be the same thing because the ayahuasca coming out of Aztec and Maya kind of area, when you look at the DMT drawings, the patterns, the shapes, this is why Native American Thunderbirds are made up of symbols and trippy patterns. It's because they're coming out of this world of almost like geometry. And the way he's described is he's a titanic shapeshifter. And they say so when he lands on the ground, he turns into a human, but when he's in the sky, his wings block out the sun. Or they say the entire sky. So they say, like, essentially, when you're in the vision realm, his wings are so big he could block out the entire sky on you. And this is just according to the lore. But in the real world, what I found is the shape-shifting abilities are not the exact same as like what we think of as Dogman. What I believe is that when you see doppelgangers, there's a very good chance that it's something like this. It's not like that's not an easy trick to show up and pretend to be one of your family members. Um, but that's so the basic difference between them is Thunderbird is an immortal shapeshifter, um, who kind of comes back and forth on its own accord. In the Skinwalker, in our version, it's basically a human who's making a deal with this second in command. So he's not making a deal with Thunderbird. They're making a deal with Chief of Ghosts and the Lord of the Underworld, they call him. And this guy, they say when he's near, it goes chilly cold and it stinks like sulfur. And this is in the old native tales. And as I'm telling you these things, you're going to remember a million stories from previous. But they say when this Chief of Ghosts is around, it stinks like death, sulfur, it goes chilly cold. And this is the one, they say he leaves a spirit food. And when you take that food, you become a slave to his underworld. And this stuff gets passed down through the masks. So I was given a couple masks of this character. And my uncle told me there's a frog in the mask. You turn it upside down and there's a frog because he's green. He says there's a frog because he's got cold green skin and he's undead. There's bugs and spiders. He's like associated with creepy crawlies. They're actually living in his skin. Snakes crawling through his skin, bugs. When you go to eat his food, they say it looks tasty, and he offers it usually to lost people in the woods, in the lore. But when you go to eat it, after you've taken a bite, you realize that it's all rotten meat with maggots and all this stuff all over it. But once you've, they say once you've made this deal, you become one of his wild men of the woods. And if I had to ask you, what do you think that wild man of the woods is?
When you mentioned the green thing, I had an encounter with the green thing. It was bipedal that reminded me of a large person with like a frog's head. So the wild person of the woods, I would have to say, is that the hairy man?
I should say, so the wild man of the woods will not necessarily have the same appearance as the frogman or the green man, who's a shapeshifter as well. So this frogman actually is very much like a Thunderbird in all ways, except for the only difference is he has his domain. Let's say they have their territories, I guess, their boundaries. They
So
work
would a
together.
so would a frogman, would he be related to the Kappa by chance?
Oh, you'd have to let me know what a kappa is. I haven't heard of it or I can't remember.
It's a frog-like creature that is said to live by ponds and stuff, and when you come upon it, the only way to be able to defeat it is to not look it in the eyes and to actually bow to it.
Could be related, absolutely. The little frog thing, I did find that when it comes to Thunderbird and this thing, that they have 4 basic shapes that they switch between, and a little frogman was one of them. And for some reason, when cultures would draw their interpretation, he would be carrying like a spoon. Sometimes he had like armor on, and I don't know if
Okay.
that was more so.
The Kappa was known to wear a crown.
Son of a. Okay, well, you remember I told you Chief of Ghosts and Lord of the Underworld? Well, it's actually King of Ghosts. The translation, when you go from one language to another, you can move that word around, but that's essentially what it means, is the King of Ghosts.
Okay, there's a book, if you want to try to find it. The book is called Mythological Beasts, and in that book, it talks about the kappa. It's a KAPPA, and you might find that interesting.
This sounds like another being, but I can't quite bring him up yet because we're
John,
pretty far, pretty early. Oh yeah,
have you
sorry. Go ahead.
have you ever done DMT?
No,
No. Okay.
no, I haven't. I've only studied.
Okay.
I've done no psychedelics except when I was like 16. Once I did a bit of mushrooms, I didn't like it.
Oh yeah, I did too when I was young.
I didn't do enough to see anything, but I just kind of
Yeah, me neither.
felt really unusual. I went and looked in the mirror, and that was a big mistake. And
I've known a few people that have done DMT and they said it was a trip.
oh, the thing about it is like during my research, I've heard that they're actually going somewhere because
Yeah.
there's been studies like the spirit molecule with Rick Strassman where people were meeting the same being. They were
Yep.
able to recreate alien abduction.
Well, and it's what we produce when we die.
Right. And that's what I was saying in the first episode was that there's a bit of overlap between what we know of as NDE and DMT
Yep.
or near death experience.
Yeah.
And actually some of the potions that they drink actually flatline them.
Yep. I've heard that too.
And this is what the Navajo guy was talking about, how the skinwalker works is he drinks a potion that kills him basically, but they're staying alive by what I call the silver cord.
Yep.
So they're literally hanging by a thread, and not everybody wakes up once they're done, because sometimes you just can't get back in. But this stuff is all heavily connected when it comes to mythology, ghosts, and shamanism. When we look at Native Americans, all their beings are usually revolved around the shaman, unless they're actual animals, then they're going to be more so in the hunter's territory. But when you get into shamans, the first being that comes up everywhere, Thunderbird, followed by the skinwalker or shapeshifter. But the one that's unknown is this chief of ghosts who seems to be very well known in my area, to the point where like I was saying, they have all this information on him, the smell, the appearance, the how he walks, how he moves. They say he crawls and shuffles around kind of like spider like, kind of like I don't know if you've seen a capoeira dance. He kind of moves like a capoeira dance, but he's also crawling. So sometimes when I hear certain things about like especially sulfur, the cold, and the rotten smell, that comes up a lot with Skinwalker Dogman. And I think it points to this chief of ghosts. And the reason why I'm bringing him up is because this goes back into my Lord of the Underworld adventure that I thought was biblical. But it doesn't make sense because why would it be biblical if it's native in origin, right? And this is when my eyes really started to open, is once I started getting into other mythologies and looking for answers. And actually, I spent a long time searching for people just to have a conversation about it, but I never really found anyone to talk to. Instead, what I kept finding is more information on these things. And I believe I was tracking them, and I built like a timeline from when they're cited, what their names are, what their titles are, never changes, which means if we call them over here the king of the gods, let's say, when we go to another country, they call him king of the gods. You know what I mean? So once I got the pattern a number of times, and I'm going to share what the patterns are and how I found them. But it's really important to paint this picture of who these two are, because they were so familiar in my vision quest that if I were to see them, I feel like I could recognize them by their fruits, if that makes sense. Where otherwise, I think
Makes sense.
they're very hard. How do you track a shapeshifter would be like my first question, and I don't know necessarily the answer, but I think the fruits is the ways what the Bible says is how you'll know them. But that's where my investigation led me, is to the Bible, and then I realized, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm able to interpret something here that others might miss, um, based on this personal vision quest. And here's why, and it's not me necessarily. It was the prophecy, and then the prophecies from others. And have you guys ever seen this movie called Clash of the Titans?
Yes.
The new one with Sam Worthington, I think his name was.
I had never saw that one.
I will recommend it after this, because what I'm going to tell you, when you watch it, it's almost like I wish you could watch it first to see it, and then watch it after I tell you this, because it should shatter some dimensions. But for the people at home who've seen it and had their own interpretation, it would appear to just be a fantasy movie about mythology. But when I watched that movie, once again, my eyeballs almost came out of my head. I felt like, you ever see The Matrix, when Morpheus shows Neo the real world, and Neo was like, that's where I'm at with this stuff. Basically, it was happening every week. Like, I'm looking at the screen like, no, this can't be. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't my theory that I'm trying to prove. Instead, I was trying to disprove it. Like, this can't be it.
I've never
Right.
seen The Matrix.
It's a fantastic concept. And one second.
Okay. Hi, Mike.
How are you, Amanda?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm taking notes.
Sorry, my
I'm
door got
listening.
opened.
Oh,
Oh, you're fine. We was just talking. I
yeah,
told
we
her
were
I
just saying hi.
was taking notes.
Well,
I'm so intrigued with all this, John.
Oh, thanks. I'm actually glad you guys are. Well, I don't want to be arrogant, but I know there's something here, not because of me or my story, but I almost feel like I need to share it, because it's the only reason why I was able to see this duo appear again and again.
Yeah, share it.
And so in Clash of the Titans, what's kind of funny is the movies have helped me on my investigation, and I realized somebody in the occult is putting the truth in these movies and hiding it as fantasy. And it was actually so obvious that, just the movies itself revealed things that I could have never found on my own, because, like, what they were doing was they were bringing scripture and they were putting it in a movie, and then I was seeing it right in front of my face, and then it was almost like, I don't know if I'm the one coming up with it, but I was hearing the scripture as it was happening, and it wasn't mythology, let's just say that. And I'm going to tell you the moment I realized. So in the movie, and I need to explain this. So Chief of Ghosts, other than all the other stuff I told you, they say when a boat leaves and it's sunken, that this Chief of Ghosts is the one who sank the boat. And this is like, because we have a fisherman village, this came up a lot. And so you would need some sort of spiritual protection when you went out on the waters. But that lore was always there, the food, the spirit food in the boat. But during Clash of the Titans, the first thing I noticed is Perseus appeared to be a Greek version of this war chief from the prophecy. So I thought, like, oh, this is cool. That's what I was thinking in my head, right? So this is pretty cool stuff. Like, this is like a Greek war chief here. Then I started realizing that what they've done is they've blended the realms together. So they've made it so that the spirit world and the physical world are one, and that you're seeing the Greek gods interact with the real world the way they would in the spiritual world. But at a certain point in the movie, Hades comes out of the water and he
Wasn't
sinks.
Poseidon, sorry, John,
Oh, go ahead.
wasn't Poseidon the god of the water?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But specifically in our culture, the drowned, the souls of the drowned would go
Oh,
to the
okay.
underworld. And in
Got
the
it.
movie, Hades he just popped out of the water. Poseidon was in the movie as well. But specifically in the movie, he pops out of the water, and Perseus and his family were just coming onto the dock, and he sank the boat, and Perseus's whole family goes under. And this basically starts Perseus on his quest, let's say. Now, seems like an emotional scene, but nonetheless a fantasy movie, right, to most. However,
Yeah.
in that moment, I had just realized the Lord of the Underworld and the Chief of Ghosts is Hades from Greek mythology. And
Yep.
it wasn't just the scene, it was the fact that, oh, wait a minute, Hades offers a pomegranate where he trapped Persephone, right? This applies to other people who eat that spirit food, that they're going to get trapped in this underworld. And at the same time, I keep watching the movie, and I realized that Zeus is actually a thunderbird, because he when he's flying, he's an eagle, and he goes and lands on the ground, and he turns into his more common Zeus form. I'm sorry, my dog is scratching. You guys try to absorb that for a sec because it's heavy duty, but think about it for a second. I got to get my dog water. I'll be right back.
Okay. Mike, I'm going to use the restroom real fast.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay.
Everybody can take a little break.
Okay, sorry, Mike, I'm back. I just had to quickly. My dog scratches at his bowl when he needs water.
That's funny. My daughter's dog does that too. She'll dig in it, and like chase it around the floor.
But this movie helped me visualize, like, holy shit, wait a minute. Thunderbird is an eagle who controls the storms, the lightning. He's the king of gods, or chief of gods, the most powerful spiritual entity. And I'm sitting there thinking, the dots are connecting thanks to this one movie. And not only that, but number 2, Lord of the Underworld, the one who offers the food, traps people in the underworld, the drowned victims, and how they connect to this prophecy of a war chief. Remember how I said earlier, I think these same 2 crash every vision quest? That old story of Perseus was about I believe he was a Macedonian war leader or military leader, something along those lines. And I'm not a historian, so someone's going to be upset because I'm probably wrong. But he was some sort of actual military leader who later got changed into son of Zeus, and I believe they made up all the deeds. It's either that or they're describing more vision quests when he cuts off Medusa's head. That sounds more like a near death or a DMT type vision quest where you're going in and you're actually battling supernatural entities, or you're having some sort of interaction, sort of like me going into this underworld and speaking and having like a face off for just a brief moment, right? That's the way I see it. After that is that it's very similar to native mythology, and when you go into it, yeah, you look at the old scripts about Greek, and they talk about sorcerers.
Right.
And actually, they were getting into a lot of stuff like Black Death and potions and salves, where they would they would call it anointing. They would anoint
Yep.
themselves with right.
The
And a
same
lot
in
of
the
this,
Bible.
a lot of this stuff is kind of coming out now.
And
Even
That's
back
what
in
they were.
the 15th and 16th century, the werewolves were using, salves and ointments. And,
yep. Anointing
you know,
himself.
is a werewolf, is that a skinwalker? I think that's the question. A shapeshifter.
I'm
I
starting to think so.
I think there could be something physical, but I lean towards when we hear about that version of the skinwalker, if it's real, it will appear everywhere in that way. So when you start reading old stories, it'll bring
Right.
up how the shaman was involved and how there's dark magic and a ritual, possibly cannibalism,
Yes.
along with some sort of potion. Um, that's what I started to think is like after a while, it's like if something's true, you're gonna start see it coming up again and again and again.
Patterns, uh, corroboration, uh,
I think that's why people don't like. You ever hear the stories where people shoot them, but for some
right.
reason the bodies are disappearing?
Because it's
Uh,
spiritual.
I've wondered sometimes. There's a story that Travis Carpenter shared about a guy that had shot and killed a juvenile Sasquatch. And it scared him so bad that he left. And whenever they came back, the other ones had removed its body. They had took it.
I believe that.
You know, Scott Carpenter, one of the main things that he would really push is do not hunt, do not hunt them. And the
Yeah.
reason that he would push that so heavily is what he had going on at his house. And if you look at the research and cryptids related to the supernatural, 25 approximately, let me put that word in there so I don't get called on it, approximately 25% of the people that have a cryptid encounter will also have a supernatural encounter.
Yep.
Scott Carpenter marked that up to the reason being that, the fallen angels were involved, demons, Nephilim. There was a connection, and I believe that there's a lineage there, that there is a family bloodline there, generational curses, if you will. And he started having supernatural things that would occur as far as even inside of his home. He would have wet footprints in his kitchen that were
Yeah.
unexplainable. So it's almost, in my mind, John, I'll throw this out there to you like this, see what you think. So let's say you have a cryptid. We won't say any certain kind. We'll just say you have a cryptid, right, that's running around on Earth. I believe they're flesh and blood because they require shelter, food, water, and I have, along with people I know, witnessed they do eat and they do drink. So to me, that is physical attributes of a physical body. But then I also witnessed at the same place supernatural things that happened that were unexplainable, that were not flesh and blood, but they all worked together. Is it because the old ones, the spiritual ones, are related to the abomination? And because there is a relation, are the lights we see in the sky, okay, you're going to be familiar with this, the star people, are they coming down, visiting with the the flesh and blood ones, and is that why we're getting high radiation meters, electronic?
Yes.
I went blank for a second. Electromagnetic readings and stuff like that is because what the supernatural is bringing down to the flesh and blood, which is still a lineage of them, still a relationship to them, that they're energizing them with whatever the Geiger counter readings and all. What
Yes,
do you
I
think?
believe that.
I know that goes deep, but what are your thoughts, John?
Well,
I'm going to throw that to you.
I'm like I'm open to like both possibilities. Like there has to be some unidentified beings for sure. B- Bigfoot and Almas and all these from around the world. I'm certain that they're out there, and of course there has to be some unidentified and unexplained animals that we haven't run into or beings.
Yes.
But the skinwalker and this spiritual phenomenon has really set me back because they can do things that would appear physical, like a spirit leaving footprints or scratching somebody, and I think their thirst for blood is real, and there is that symbiotic connection with the human who's a skinwalker is also consuming. And now could he consume through this shape or whatever the I want to call it an astral projection, but I don't think it's that simple. It's more of it's like putting on a demonic VR headset.
That's a
And
good way
actually,
to explain it.
because they're getting control over something. It's not just the mind. And actually, well, astral projection may just be that.
Could it be through a headset, do you think? Like if somebody were to wear a VR headset, could they be demonically um
I don't know. I've heard of things called God helmets, and
yeah,
I
I've heard of
I
that too.
I play VR, but I don't think so. I think if they were trying to do that, I don't know if it would work out. I think doing the old-fashioned way is probably, well,
Yeah.
you know what? Actually, now that I mention it, the symbiotic connection between technology and weapons through these visions, you go back to the old days, this is where they got the ideas for advanced weapons,
Yeah.
and they still are doing that. If you go
Yeah,
into
true.
like some of these files that are being released, there's a section where they're talking about creating something like a DMT and why.
Yes.
It gets into supernatural, but I don't want to get into them because that stuff's
Yeah.
pretty depressing. And
That's pretty,
You
far
know,
fetched.
but I'm open to. I don't know, man. Like that's what I know is that these spiritual ones. That's where my area is at. Even though I'm aware of Bigfoot and cryptids,
right?
I'm like trying to explain what these other two are because once it gets into the Bible, it starts getting extremely heavy duty. The fact that people don't know who these are and how they work, and I'm not saying you guys. And uh, excuse me, I should be careful. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but
You're
that's how
not
mine.
sounding arrogant.
No,
Well,
not at
yeah,
all. We
I
understand.
like I almost felt like I'm saying nobody else can see it but me, but that's not what I necessarily mean. But what I'm trying to get at is how important it is, and I don't know why me, but um, it gets heavy duty. So my second encounter. Now, remember the Hat Man I said was possibly related to this chief of ghosts, this Hades. So we're starting to collect some of these different names, but they all mean the same thing when you really get into it. Um, it means the King of the Dead and the Lord of the Underworld. And then you got his brother, who calls himself King of the Gods. And so they keep coming up. And every time they would show up, it would almost like send another shiver down my spine. But when you go into Egypt, you have these two named Amun-Ra and Osiris. Now, Amun-Ra is a falcon-headed god, but that's just the base form. Remember I told you that earlier, that these guys had 4 basic forms that they switched between?
Right.
Well, once I identified all 4 of them, it was like then they stopped escaping my vision. Now, the other forms I started to build the profile based on their mythology. So when you get into Zeus, it turns out he's actually a shapeshifter as well, and he's not always that form that we are familiar with. And that's part of the deception, is our interpretations, because this is why I missed it as well, even though I was so familiar. It was almost like something had to be made crystal clear. I almost had to go to the underworld just to see it. It's like that's how cloudy it is. When you think about it, Thunderbird, chief of the gods, shapeshifter, has a human form on the ground, eagle form in the air. Anytime you look into Zeus, his favorite form was eagle. If everybody knows, he brings the lightning and the storms, and then he's obviously the one who's associated with all the Greek military leaders. Achilles, Perseus, Alexander.
So why did the Thunderbird carry the snake?
Oh yes, I'm glad you brought that up. So in the mythology, from our area here, is that snake is not just a snake, but this battle happened, I believe, in the spirit realm, but it has an effect on this world. And that's sometimes where I lose people, because sometimes when I say it's in the spirit world, they think that means it's not as real. But according to the ones telling the stories, that the spirit world was more real than this, and actually we're in the shadow realm, and that our world is a shadow of that world, is what was
Yeah, I've heard that.
that's the way I've come to realize it. And
Oh, wow, that's so interesting.
it's because it has to do with something like, because you know how we project a shadow, which is a
Yes,
2D, it's a 2-dimensional shadow. We're 3 dimensions, so the 4th dimension is actually has something to do with projecting this like physical world,
Into the spirit realm.
and they're deeply connected.
so John, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Why do you think, and if this is what they're saying it is, this Thunderbird sighting in El Paso, Texas, the last known sighting is supposed to be from the 1970s. Why do you think that it is that they're seeing this again? Do you think that means anything if this is what it is?
It's something like a Mothman, where something may be coming,
Like a prophecy or something?
like a harbinger or a warning. Yeah, um like something might be
Interesting.
happening in that area, or the ones who seen it might want to
Yeah, warning.
reconsider. They might want to reconsider some things, because the thing about
Definitely
it is,
eerie.
when they're showing up, it's not a good sign, because it's almost like, back to what he said to me, like, F up in your mind.
No, it's a bad omen.
I think when they're showing up, somebody is messing up. And sometimes we can mess up without knowing it. And so when it comes to,
Exactly.
like, I hear people talk about intentions quite often, but sometimes there's like Jesus kind of, I'd hate to get into like bringing Jesus into it to back me up. Like, I don't like using him to arm wrestle for, or you know what I mean, for argument's sake, but I think it might be important is that, oh, I'm sorry, where was I? I just detoured myself here. I had something really important on my mind.
We was talking about, I think,
That the
Kristen.
Thunderbird was like a bad omen
Yeah,
or a bad mantra, something going bad in somebody's life, possibly.
I had something really good I was going to bring up from scripture, and I let it slip my mind, but essentially, yeah, I think it has to do with like what I was going to bring up was when Jesus was talking about people who speak on their own behalf, or they speak on what they've heard from the one who sent them. And so speaking on one's own behalf means that you're crossing a line and you're speaking lies unknowingly, but you're doing it with good intentions. But he mentioned that these people unfortunately are still liars. And I like, it
yeah,
kind of hit me real heavy when I heard him say that, because after all this I kind of went back and studied his whole story and kind of hung on to every word.
right.
And the things that were jumping out to me were not the most common known things. It was like things like that. It was like,
Well,
oh man,
a lot
like
of
I'm
people don't know that, he called gossipers, is witchcraft.
yeah, he had a lot to say about like just the little things like telling lies,
Right.
and why he is the truth, right?
The
He
truth.
declared that all the time. I'm telling you the truth. That's what
Right.
he would say. You know,
And,
that means that people were always not
and,
believing.
and the way. He was the only way.
Right.
Uh,
Interesting.
you know, doesn't he also, he talks about, if I remember right, where you're talking, it's been a while since I've been down that road, that the evil people's, flame shall
Uh-oh. Can
be
you hear Mike, John?
cut short. Uh-oh.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
I can't hear him.
You can't hear me?
Strange.
Can you hear me now? You must not be able to hear me. But he talks about the evil people's flame, will be cut short also, and it goes deep. I know what you're saying. It could go really, really deep.
Well, this stuff goes into the armor of God. Now, this prophecy that I was following is rather important, because there's a segment where he goes, the man in the vision, and I wish we had enough time to explain this, but you'll have to take my word for it, that the description of this person in the vision, after years and years of investigation, I realized that he was describing someone who sounded an awful lot like Jesus. However, nobody would expect to find Jesus in a native prophecy, but in the vision he says, "Do these things, and the fire arrows cannot touch you." And there's like this kind of like this whole list. Well, the war chief who had that vision ended up being probably the greatest military leader out of all the Native American war chiefs. Kind of won a couple of important battles, but it was the vision I was following, and I felt like I knew it pretty well. However, there was a few details I missed, because during the vision, the rider is actually going up against the elements. First, it's the water, and he comes out of the water on horseback, and then next it's hailstorm comes falling down. So it's like fire, basically fire, hailstorm, just hail, but they're on fire. That's all, like a volcanic sulfur falling from the sky. But he was saying the vision to the kid, although the war chief, who was only a kid at the time, um, he was telling him this vision while he was surviving the storm. So, and the kid actually went to a forbidden hill for a vision, and he was fasting up there for a few days. No vision came, so he jumped on his horse and he was gonna leave because he was trying to ask the creator something. So no vision, jumps on the horse, and he was like a week from fasting. Even though he didn't have his vision right, he was all disoriented. He fell off the horse, and that's when the vision happened. But down the road, I was telling that to somebody. Actually, I told that to a lot of different people, but one particular person said, "Hey, wait a minute, that sounds like Paul." And then I was like, "Wait a minute, did Paul is that the guy who wrote Armor of God?" So I went back and I realized, like, holy smokes, Paul was on a horse in the desert and he was riding until he became disoriented and fell off. And that's when Jesus came to him. And this is like when Paul's story begins. And then, so just that one, that's a long story on its own, because it would appear to me that it's a very important, because it's so recent and it's showing the same patterns. And it doesn't make sense, because this is why the vision passed me by. Not in a million years would I expect to see Jesus in a native vision. But if you think about it, of course,
Yeah, I
if he
mean
would, if
we're
he
all
can
his
appear to, if he
we're
can
all
appear
his
to
children,
Paul,
right?
who was up to some pretty bad stuff at the time. And actually, and then when it gets into native, there's some tribes that are different. Let's say there were some native tribes that were fairly holy. They have some pretty interesting and impressive like verses and proverbs and prophecies. There's also the skinwalkers, but I think we all know that. We've heard of, you know,
Right.
scalping and cannibalism
Oh
and all
yeah.
that stuff. But the holy men don't get brought up as much when it comes to the natives. But this part is very important, because what I eventually learned watching historical movies is that every movie had a golden eagle show up and fly over the battlefield. And then I was thinking, like, like what in the shit? Along the way, I'm thinking, what in the world does this even mean? But when you
Right.
get into Egypt, I was telling you, Amun Ra and Osiris. So Osiris, Lord of the Underworld, he's got green skin. They portray him as a mummy because he's undead. But this is that same Lord of the Underworld that I believe that I met.
Uh-huh.
The bird at the top there. And actually, sorry, I'm jumping over so many places. You asked why the Thunderbird carries a snake. This is important because it gets into why the Thunderbird's in Egypt. It's not actually a snake, it is a whale-eating serpent. So this what they're depicting, and we have it on big houses, on art, on emblems, crests, tribal family heirlooms, is this battle. It's depicting a fight. It's not just a story. This is an ancient battle between two titanic beasts. And Thunderbird, they say, was battling the sea serpent, who was basically threatening. What do you want to call it? You want to threatening the ocean life. He was eating all the whales.
So
Right?
possibly Leviathan out of the Bible.
Exactly. Exactly. And see, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is eventually where it brought me. And so sometimes that snake is portrayed as you'll see a whale. I don't know if you've ever seen a Thunderbird carrying a whale,
Yeah.
but Thunderbird, he's got like a horn on his head usually, and that's because he's not a normal eagle. But he's got this sort of goat
Could
horn basically on his head.
could the Thunderbird be portrayed as the dragon?
Hmm. Exactly. And that is something that comes up at the very end, as once started pulling up some old biblical and medieval artwork on the dragon, I started seeing some of these same stories.
And who the dragon
Um,
really is, huh?
and the whole thing with Amon Ra, that goes back to Moses and Ramses.
Right.
So Moses was living amongst the Egyptians, and the Egyptians' god was that Amon Ra. And like even if you watch Gods of Egypt, Exodus or whatever,
Right. Ten
there's one point.
Commandments.
There's that was the early one. There was like a newer one,
Uh-huh.
which is the one I was more familiar with, called Gods and Kings Exodus with Christian Bale, Batman. It was like
Right.
a newer one. There's a moment where he's coming out of the palace and it goes Amon Ra Osiris, Amon Ra Osiris, Amon Ra Osiris. There's this lineup of statues. That's the order. Like and they're on both sides. So as you walk down the road, you're looking Amon Ra Osiris, Amon Ra Osiris, all the time. Like these two were important to them. And not only that, the movies which are made by these people in Hollywood were portraying like they knew that. And like so me having that vision quest in the experience, I'm realizing like Moses is also similar to this prophecy from the war chief, except Moses is actually the first or one of the first ones on record, but he also went to a forbidden hill, and they
Right.
bring up the burning bush. And but
Uh,
he also guess what happens, right? He gets those instructions.
the Ten
um
Commandments.
and now his instructions were far more consequential to the rest of the world than the prophecy I was speaking of. But that prophecy I'm speaking of is, I think, an example of how these things are still happening. It seems like every century actually it'll happen a few times. And within the lore, when you get into it, these same two are lingering in the background. And when you think about Paul having his near-death experience, where did he end up? Was in Rome.
Right.
With Jupiter and Zeus, and so he breaks down all those things and how they work: sorcery, witchcraft, the armor of God. You battle against the principalities,
Yeah.
authorities,
We wrestle not against flesh.
the spirits in the heavenly realm, right? He's speaking about Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon because he mentions the elements that do not be deceived by the elemental. What exactly does he call it? There's one verse where he says, "Don't be deceived by the elemental gods of the world," basically,
Right.
which is almost like a line you don't really hear too much about.
Like the little G gods.
hmm Exactly. And now I believe these three come up quite a bit. And the idea that there's only one evil one, I think, has tricked people because there's actually three. And I can prove it because they're all in the book of Job. And these same three actually will continuously pop up. I've only had the experience with the two, but that third one just always seems to. He's a part of the story, but he's not. He's not as. He doesn't seem to be as prominent. And what I did notice is that every one of those movies that they made about history and mythology is when the prophecy happens, right? They become aware of it, the evil ones. And what Zeus does is he sends Hades. He goes, all right. He basically unchains him and says, "Away you go. Take him out." And why that really freaked me out is because they interrupted my vision quest, and I ended up in the underworld face to face with him, who said, um, "F around, and you're going to find out."
Right.
So to see it in these movies, like, oh, wait a minute, they send him as he's basically the goon. He's the enforcer of the group.
Right.
And this is what I'm telling you that this is the movies, the mythology, the fantasy, but what I think they're doing is they're giving us the truth hidden as that. Because like these stories like
I agree with that 100%. I think that a lot of these movies have messages um, dating back from our older times. Absolutely. And what's so weird is these mythological people. Why is it that when I was in school, and maybe they still teach this, maybe they don't, I don't know, but they actually taught us about the mythical gods. Like they must be important some way somehow if they're teaching kids about it. It's just interesting to me.
Oh God, we could go down a whole
Hmm.
rabbit hole on that. The Rothschild and
Yeah.
uh, who's
so
writing the children's books, what's been taught to them, who owns the textbooks.
Well, and then the lullabies too. My gosh,
Yeah. Uh,
they're so evil.
well, you
you
remember
know,
what Pan's gimmick was child abduction and playing music.
Right.
right.
Um now I don't know. I guess now is like I almost don't want to connect too many dots at once because it's like we don't want.
Right.
But
Right.
there's something about
It's
that I could
interesting.
say. No, oh no, it is. There's
Oh
actually
yeah.
something I could say, but it's like, do I want to?
Do you want to
Do
go
I
there
want
or
to?
not?
Want to jump that line?
and we don't
Exactly.
and we don't have time to go real deep. We're probably gonna have to do a part 3 because I got to be
Oh
on the
yeah.
road here pretty soon.
Okay. Is there something? Could I try to close by
Yeah, absolutely.
just putting this up into a little bit of a package? So there was actually another encounter that I didn't quite get into, but after that was a Grim Reaper type experience in my room, which I believe
Oh, that's amazing. We
is
want
a
to hear
sep-
about that.
I believe is a separate entity from the underworld thing. And during my investigation, actually, it would appear that the Thunderbird is actually a Grim Reaper, if not the very Grim Reaper.
It's, I mean, any logical person could really understand that because of the bad omens that happen. You know, it would make sense. I mean, that's how they kind of compare the Mothman, but you would almost have to wonder if that's what's going on.
That's right. Exactly. It's almost like there, but it almost seems like many different things. But as I was digging deeper and deeper, it would appear as though um, they're all describing something very similar when it comes to this. The Thunderbird who carried that snake, because so there was this battle, and apparently that's what caused the giant flood. Is this fight between Thunderbird and the whale-eating serpent? And when it comes into Job, there's actually a third beast missing. But you think about the scripture, floods, beasts, visions, storms, these things come up quite often. And for some reason, they always pick a military leader. If you notice, like that's what really tripped me out is because I never pictured Jesus as someone who's like a leading an army type of thing. It was almost like it's almost like I was deceived on who he was so that I couldn't see. But
Interesting.
because what happens is after Moses, I started getting into Samson, David, and you realize there's a lot of military leaders and fighters. It's not all about um, turning the other cheek. It's about surviving the storm and standing up to the principalities, authorities, and all that. But that military leader connection, almost like when I realized Moses was a general, and then eventually had his vision to lead the people out. I was really mind blown because once again, like it goes into Perseus, because he was the first one that made me realize the connection with Zeus, um, who's also, what people don't know is Zeus and Hades are Amun and Osiris in Egypt. If you look into Alexander the Great, they say he is the son of Zeus Amun because, in their opinion, Zeus and Amun were the same person. And so he kind of united the Egypt and in Greek, if I'm not mistaken, with Cleopatra. And either way, I don't know as much about the history as the mythology, but I do know he claimed to be the son of Zeus Amun. And if you look up the depiction, it is Zeus with goat horns. And that revealed to me the third form of Thunderbird is actually a goat. And if that doesn't just scream something obvious, by then I was like starting to realize, like, not only do I got a pattern here, but this is getting a little freaky deaky. But if you look into Zeus and Amon Ra, they have sometimes the ram horn. Like he's got a falcon head with a ram horn. And I wondered about the falcon head, but apparently in Africa there's something called an African fisher eagle. And it's basically a bald eagle, but it looks like a falcon. It's an eagle species. So I don't know if that's actually a connection but that's something I found along the way. But these two mixing up with the Vision Quest is really important because Thunderbird is always depicted driving a canoe, taking souls to the underworld, right? And
Oh,
that's
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Gosh.
That's exactly what like the Grim Reaper and Amon Ra do, and Zeus. They bring people in the underworld. There's actually like a river Styx, and he's got a freaking boat. All that stuff was really tripping me out, like when I was learning it. And
Yeah, because they have the lake of fire. Maybe that's what that's coming from.
in the mythology, yeah, well, there's actually like a journey before they get to the underworld in some of these mythologies.
Interesting.
But so he's carrying the snake, and it causes the flood, and he's got this connection. So there's actually these three of land, air, and water. And I believe that's what's described in the book of Job. And believe it or not, the third beast missing, like everybody knows Behemoth, Leviathan, but the third one is the Ziz, who is a eagle or a giant bird whose wings block out the sun. And that goes back, that's a callback to one of the Thunderbirds' origins, blocking out the sky in the spirit realm. But they also come to Earth and they do things. They show up in visions, and they pick on certain people, especially when it comes to prophecies. They send those goons, right? If you think about it.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're going to have to pick up the goons on a part 3 for sure. I've got to be at a place at 8:30, so I'm going to have to hit the road. You have so much information that we could just keep going and going and going and going. Are you up for a part 3, John?
Yeah, if you guys are still interested, I think I still got more, because
Oh, absolutely.
there's still more depth to some of these things. And actually, there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up, but I'm like, as I'm remembering things, I'm remembering other things. And
Right.
it's actually I stopped my research about a year ago and was
wow.
ready to like walk away. So some of it's like I'm recalling it from quite a while ago, but I do have like a bunch of pictures saved on my computer. Not that they're not too important, other than it shows that there is real archaeology behind like these different areas. Like you can compare an East Coast to a West Coast Thunderbird and have the same symbology, because if you heard of like there was a couple questions I seen, like someone brought up the phoenix and the firebird and the thunderbird are like birds of a feather.
I think that was Mike. I think that's his picture.
Yeah, that's my photo. Yeah.
If you think about the death and resurrection and who they're copying with that, but the thunderbird symbolizes death and the phoenix symbolizes its own rebirth, its
Right.
own resurrection.
There was
And
only one person that defeated death. That was Jesus Christ. You know.
Amen.
and actually, so when we get into the tracking these things back, like I've only got part of the collection here because it goes from Egypt and Greece. Also, Mayan and Aztec kind of have the same pattern going on.
Right.
But specifically, when you get further back into the Bible, the Canaanites and also Sumerians, there's something very interesting about the beings they have and the patterns in their stories as well.
You really did a deep dive
Yeah.
research. This
Well,
is
Well,
pretty good
here,
stuff.
yeah.
the thing is, like, it goes back to those encounters, the Grim Reaper and the Lord of the Underworld. Now, tell me, this is something that really became obvious later. But in the Bible, what was it? What part was it? But they say with, let me think about it for a sec. I'm trying to think. Something follows another. I think it's death follows Hades or something like that. Hades follows death. They're actually talking about not only the brothers, the beings, the place, the thing. There's a lot more to that than just dying and going to hell. They're talking about you want to meet the Grim Reaper and his brother Hades. There's a way to F around and find out. And it's not quite as simple as some people think. So when you get into NDEs, it's kind of, some people who believe in Jesus meet the other guy. Some people who are atheists meet Jesus. And it's unclear to me exactly, but it would appear that on the other side they know what they're doing and the messages they're sending back.
Right.
But it's for me as someone observing, I have I'm not exactly sure
It could get
what
deep
landed.
really fast.
I'm not exactly sure what landed me over there.
Right. Well, John, we're going to have to call it on this one. I've got to be at a place at 8:30, and I got about an hour drive ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
Would you be willing to come back for a part 3?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, please.
Thank you, John, for coming on. And we'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I will be in
Yeah.
touch with you
Yeah,
for sure.
Yes,
thanks for
John,
having
thank
me.
you.
And, oh man, the thing is like some of the good stuff is coming up. Like you see that picture I got there.
Uh-huh.
What if I told you Thunderbird might be in pictures like that? And like another thing I was going to bring up was how the Thunderbird carries the sun, and when they draw him, they draw the sun behind his head.
True.
They're mimicking, right? They're copying, and
All evil is the perversion of perversion of the Creator God, Jesus Christ. So
but you can
even
see it in the artwork, the Egyptian artwork. They'll put the sun behind his head just like that, and it's almost once you've seen it, it's obvious. But the
right.
weird thing is, it's hard to confirm.
Yeah.
But I will say that there's certainly a lot of things right out in the open.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When it comes to paranormal, like you've been saying, like some of these things are more connected than we could even imagine.
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely.
John, you
thank
should really think about opening up your own YouTube channel because you have a lot to say.
Well, I appreciate that. I tried, but I'm not too good at chatting on my own. But I am working on something that
Maybe
is
your
Islam
girlfriend
related.
can help you do a little bit of co-hosting and that'll get you started. But you do a really good job talking.
Yes.
The hardest part is you guys have you guys are already on this road. If I tried bringing this up to, let's call it like normal people or someone in church, they would probably
Think you're
think I was,
crazy.
they would think I'm possessed.
Yeah.
Like, you know
I
what?
gotcha.
I've had Christian people tell me be gone and things like that,
Mm.
as if
Wow.
as if I was Satan.
Right. People can be mean, dude. They for sure can. On that
Yes.
note, though, I'm going to have to run so I can get on the road. I'll be in contact with you. That way we can get a third one set up, and then we will wrap it up in a third one. We'll make it where we have a lot more time.
Yeah. Sorry, I was a little bit
Oh,
late today.
you're fine. Not a
Sorry
problem
I
at
came
all.
in and out.
It's
Yeah,
okay. All
thanks
right,
for
John.
listening. Thanks for
Hey,
listening, and yeah, just send me a message, and whenever you want to do another one, we could wait a couple weeks if you got other stories on
okay.
the line.
All right. I will for sure be in touch, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Good
Oh
night,
yeah,
John.
yeah, no problem. You
Good
guys
night,
have a
Yep.
good
John.
night.
Thanks. Thank
Good
you.
night.